The IDW Hasbro Universe, 2005. Location classified. It's a dark room lit only by a lamp hanging above the desk in the center. At one side of the table sits Conrad Hauser, a member of the United States Army who is wounded and battered. He's confused as to where he is, why he's here, and who the man sitting in front of him is, a mysterious general in full uniform and aviators. A pistol that has been taken apart sits before them on the table. The general asks Conrad a simple question. Are you in or out? As he asks, he begins to put the pistol together. Conrad doesn't have an answer because he has so many questions. The man introduces himself as Hawk, telling Conrad that they don't use rank in his organization. Hawk ominously asks Conrad why he thinks this meeting is taking place. Conrad suggests that this is over what happened in a country called Trucial. A convoy of US soldiers are going down the road in Trucial, just another country in a certain region of the world that the United States involves itself in as part of the global war on terror. Conrad Hauser is the field commander of the convoy, but the drive goes poorly when an IED roadside bomb goes off, cueing an ambush from insurgents who launch their attacks on the US forces, hitting the Americans with an RPG barrage. Soon, 70% of the convoy had been knocked out, and the command vehicle was hit. Wounded with a broken arm, Conrad limps out of his vehicle and directs his forces to return fire, with the goal being to fight back the enemy against all odds. Hawk criticizes Conrad for using proper location names, as his unit always keeps everything off the record, and not mentioning locations and proper names keeps it that way. Hawk reviews the incident in Trucial before revealing that he was paraphrasing the citation that came with a Purple Heart and Silver Star medal. Conrad doesn't seem that impressed that he's earned the medals, as he already has a Silver Star and 2 Purple Hearts. But Hawk tells him that these are different because these are posthumous. Conrad has been declared legally dead by the government, recorded as falling in battle in the ambush in Trucial. Uncomfortable with the situation, Conrad prepares to leave, but Hawk stresses that he needs an answer. Is he in or is he out? Conrad wants to know more, just a hint at what this organization is, but Hawk tells him that he has to call to see the cards. But he can be confident that he will serve the Constitution of the United States. Conrad wants to know if this unit is even legal or if it has oversight, but Hawk doesn't answer him. Conrad mentions that he has a sister in Spokane that he can't just abandon, but Hawk asks what part of posthumous do you not understand? As he says so, he loads the pistol and racks the slide. An uneasy moment of silence passes before Conrad says he's in. Hawk tells him to forget about this meeting before he congratulates him, passing Conrad the pistol and telling him he's now part of his provisional unit. As he does so, he tells Conrad that from this point on, Conrad Hauser doesn't exist, and he is now Duke. Duke questions who thought up of such a silly name before asking Hawk if he was going to shoot him if he said no. Hawk says nothing for a moment before turning away and reassuring Duke that they're the good guys. Don't you ever forget that. Hey, what's up everybody, Commander Radix here, bringing you another episode of Transformers Lore. Today, we're going to continue a trend I've been doing lately, and that's hitting major IDW Hasbro Universe storylines. Today, I figured we'd talk about the formation of G.I. Joe, or the Joint Services Special Counter-Terrorist Group, as they are a key part of the Hasbro Universe. The events of this story occur around 1 year before Transformers Infiltration, 2 years before the Decepticon occupation of Earth in All Hail Megatron, and 3 years before the beginning of the Last Laugh arc, which began in G.I. Joe Cobra that takes place in 2008. This story plays out in G.I. Joe Origins number 1 through 5. There's a few things I want to at least mention before we start this story. The name G.I. Joe is the nickname for the Joint Services Special Counter-Terrorist Group. The name G.I. Joe was actually a code name used by a man named General Joseph Colton, a member of a unit called the Adventure Team and later the Adventure Force. The adventure team dealt with fighting communism during the Cold War, while also secretly being involved in things like the Transformers, when they once fought off the Decepticon Soundwave while he was on the search for Bludgeon. But when the adventure team was disbanded, General Hawk would eventually step in to create an elite fighting force for the United States based off the adventure team, and named after G.I. Joe himself in his honor. But now, without further ado, let's get into the story. In the early morning, a C-130 is flying over an unknown location. Inside the plane stands Hawk, Duke, as well as 2 other potential members of the team, Scarlet and Stalker. Hawk informs them that they have a mission, and this is both an exercise, a test, and a real mission combined. They have 24 hours to figure out what the mission even is, and how to accomplish it. They are each given different code words to memorize them that will be hints on how to finish the mission. Duke is told the word NLVCH, and Scarlet is told the word Buick. And so, Stalker, under orders, tosses their parachutes out of the plane, and the 2 dive out to get them. Stalker is to go to Waypoint 2, and he puts on his parachute, saying that the whole throwing out the parachute thing was a bit overboard. As he jumps, Hawk informs him that his parachute is broken as he tosses a working parachute after him. After all, Stalker, though he is a veteran of the original adventure team that served with G.I. Joe Colton himself, and once went toe-to-toe with Soundwave and the Cybertronians, is being tested in this mission as well. As Duke and Scarlet land, they try to figure out where they are, and Scarlet quickly deduces that they're in the desert range north of Las Vegas. Scarlet goes hitchhiking until a van driven by a woman named Connie shows up. Scarlet notices that Connie has prosthetic legs. As she boards the van, Duke pops up asking for a ride as well. Feeling threatened by the situation, Connie floors it and drives away, leaving Duke in the dust while pulling a gun on Scarlet, as she thought this was a hitchhiking-turned-hijacking situation. Connie explains that she was a sergeant in the military police and wasn't about to let people attack her. Scarlet convinces Connie that she's in the military too, but Connie then suspects her of being some sort of deserter or worse. However, Scarlet uses her skills to disarm Connie as the van crashes into a sign. Duke manages to jog up to the van as Connie emerges to begin to repair the van. She says that she trusts the 2 a bit more since Scarlet took her gun but didn't kill her. That being said, the gun was a bluff as it was not loaded, as Connie is tired of killing people. She explains that she was in a convoy that got hit by insurgents with an IED. An insurgent white phosphorus grenade took away her legs in the attack. She offers to help them in their mission, but they say they're not entirely sure what their mission is, only knowing NLVCH and Buick as keywords. Connie says she knows what those words mean. In the year 1998, there was a man who was a member of the Green Berets, a doctor, and a psychologist with genius abilities. However, one day he has a mental breakdown and has more and more breaks with reality. He finally shoots and strangles his family, takes his stuff as well as a slew of weapons from the military like C4, and flees. He's wanted as a deserter, but under a new alias, he was able to set up a pyramid scheme energy company, and he becomes worth billions as one of the richest men in the country, even having the Frank Lloyd Wright house duplicated in Dallas, Texas. However, in 2005, his company crashes. His world crumbling around him, the man had another break with reality and flies to a small, specialized clinic in Las Vegas for plastic surgery on his face after murdering his second family. However, after his surgery, he notices a man in the bed beside him and recognizes the bandaged man as a detached airborne ranger who served with him on a secret mission in Central America way back during their military days. The airborne ranger was still in the military and was at the hospital for reconstructive surgery as his face was mangled in a Black Ops mission. Recognizing the deserter, the ranger managed to fax the military before the insane man destroyed the clinic with 20 pounds of C4 to kill the doctors and those who would recognize his new face. However, the ranger survives the explosion, only being further disfigured in the process. However, the government is onto him as the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives, as well as FBI forces surround his home in Dallas, Texas. A soldier from the Army Criminal Investigation Division, as well as a member of the military police, arrive, briefing the government forces on the insane man as he is armed and dangerous. As the government forces push deeper into the house, the man reveals himself with a mask, a cutout portion of the original art piece Saturn Devouring His Son by Francisco Goya. As nobody knows what he looks like and he is a monster, the insane man gives himself the name of the Chimera, as he attacks the government forces, calling them jackbooted members of the American Gestapo, and he is John Brown at Harper's Ferry. And so, Chimera successfully kills the government forces and declares that he has loose ends to tie up in Las Vegas. In Las Vegas, Connie has taken Duke and Scarlett to the North Las Vegas Community Hospital, or NLVCH, while Buick stands for Burn Unit Intensive Care Unit, and Bed K. Before them lays a ranger covered in burns who can no longer speak. Duke remarks that he understands the ranger survived 2 different explosions, but he still doesn't see how the severely injured man could be of any help, as he suspects Hawk sent them to recruit the ranger. However, though the man cannot speak, he can certainly hear as he looks at Duke. All the while, the TV in the room is playing information about the siege in Dallas, as it reports that Chimera has fled the scene in his own personal corporate jet. Realizing that he's in danger, the Bandage Ranger quickly writes down, "Get me out of here." Certainly, 5 minutes later, Chimera, dressed as a doctor, goes to Bed K in the hospital, only to find Connie where the Ranger should be. Connie draws her gun, but Chimera sets off some C4 that causes the room to explode. Outside the hospital, Duke and Scarlett are wheeling the Bandage Ranger out before seeing the explosion behind them. Realizing that Connie was dead, they run to Connie's van, but the Ranger sees Chimera approaching through the side mirror. He quickly turns around and throws a saline pack at Chimera, distracting him before using his pole to fight Chimera off. During their fight, Chimera calls the bandaged man Snake Eyes, after a name he called him back when they served together. Duke holds off Chimera as Scarlett loads Snake Eyes, and soon the 3 begin their escape. As they drive away, Duke tells Snake Eyes he was wrong about second-guessing his ability, as they welcome Snake Eyes to the team. Later, Stalker arrives at the destroyed hospital and orders the body in Snake Eyes' bed, who is secretly Connie, to come with him to be buried with full honors at Arlington National Cemetery, as Snake Eyes is a war hero. In reality, Stalker wants to retrieve Connie's body with no autopsy, so her body can be used as a placeholder for Snake Eyes, so that he can declare Snake Eyes as legally dead to join Hawk's team. Duke, Scarlett, and Snake Eyes set up at the Las Vegas Motel north of the city itself, as the owner of the motel is a man named Bob Light, a veteran and a friend of Hawk. A doctor is brought to see Snake Eyes, coming to the conclusion that he needs rest, or else reconstructive surgery will be impossible. He is also interested in the I Ching tattoo on his arm, and begins to ask questions and come to conclusions about Snake Eyes and Scarlett tells him that he's not here to ask questions, as she blindfolds him and prepares to send him over to another US military base. Meanwhile, Duke is meeting with Hawk at a military base where Hawk briefs him on Chimera, explaining how Chimera had hacked into the government and downloaded hundreds of files on anti-government groups, anarchists, tax resistors, and survivalists. Hawk tells Duke he'll contact him later as he needs to focus on a new member of the team's test mission. At Arlington, a funeral is held for Snake Eyes with Connie's body in the coffin. Only Stalker and a US officer are there, who explains that the only reason he's there is because he couldn't redeploy because of his wound. He tosses a knife into the grave and says that Snake Eyes could work wonders with it, striking out of nowhere. That's why he and his unit called him the Snake Man. In Montana, a man walks into a diner and sees Chimera looking at an FBI file on him. He demands to know why Chimera is looking at his file when Chimera discreetly puts a gun to his gut, as they have some things to talk about. At the motel, Duke tells Snake Eyes about his funeral and provides him the silver star he earned posthumously. After tomorrow, it will be going into a safe at the Pentagon. Scarlett and Duke leave for dinner and to get distance to make contact with Hawk, placing the silver star on the table beside Snake Eyes. They drive over 10 miles away to establish a satellite link with Hawk, as Scarlett asks about how they should tell Connie's family about what happened to her, but Duke says Connie knew what she signed up for. He asks Scarlet if she ever had any second thoughts on her service, such as an incident in Bosnia, where she was part of an intelligence team that was looking for information on a massacre, and her cover was blown in a market. She had killed the men who attacked her, and she said she didn't regret killing them, because she thought about what they would do if they had overpowered her and took her prisoner. It only made her more determined. On the Nevada-Utah border, Hawk is in a car with a man named Heavy Duty outside a bank. Heavy Duty. They are following 4 outlawed tax resistors who are currently robbing the bank after buying MREs, bottled water, and ammo. Hawk wants to know where their apocalypse stockpile is. He sends Heavy Duty to do discreet recon, but Heavy Duty knows that his huge hulking figure and his inability to be separated from his machine gun he calls Emma will make that impossible. Of course, a fight breaks out at the bank and one robber flees. Heavy Duty goes with Hawk and chases him just as Duke makes contact with Hawk. Hawk tells Duke that he doesn't have time to talk, but he needs the connection to track the robber via satellite. Meanwhile, in the motel, 2 men break into Snake Eyes' room, and one of them makes fun of Snake Eyes before preparing to rob him. However, the other robber is a former ranger, and he sees the silver star beside Snake Eyes. He tells his partner that they aren't going to rob Snake Eyes, and they leave. However, Snake Eyes was never in any real threat, as he was holding a knife in his hand at the ready. In a cabin in the woods, Chimera has been guided by the man at the diner to the headquarters for the criminals he's trying to recruit. He reveals he's wearing C4, and any shot at him will detonate him. He criticizes the leader for having held meetings for years, but nowhere close to any actual action. He, on the other hand, has money in gold bars and Krugerrands. He finally shoots the ringleader in the head and takes command of the discontent under his own wing. Duke and Scarlet do return to the motel and notice that it has been broken into. Realizing everything's safe, Scarlet remarks that they'll never know what happened since Snake Eyes is silent. Later the next day, Hawk's forces all assemble at the Las Vegas motel. Hawk, Duke, Scarlet, Snake Eyes, and Stalker are met with Heavy Duty, Rock and Roll, and Breaker. The provisional team is now all together with Duke as the first sergeant, Scarlet as intelligence, Stalker as operations, Heavy Duty as a heavy machine gunner, Rock and Roll as an M60 gunner, and Breaker for communications. They socialize and get to know each other before Hawk reveals that the paramilitary forces he and Heavy Duty followed fled to a mysterious base in Nevada and are likely linked with Chimera. The military installation in question looks like it's been closed for years, with no record of it existing, though Hawk suspects that the records were removed in a convenient fire at Fort Leonard Woods in the 1970s. Snake Eyes raises the TV volume as a story plays about a Wyoming National Guard convoy being attacked outside Green River, in a professional operation where an anti-tank missile launcher was stolen. Soon afterwards, in northern Utah, Chimera uses the missile launcher to take out an armored truck to steal its money. The guard begs Chimera to let him live because he has a family, which prompts Chimera to kill him. Hawk's team learns of the other operation, which is financial in nature, and Hawk realizes Chimera likely has a big plan. As they know he's heading towards the base in Nevada, they need to intercept him. Duke will command the group in the field, and the team will board a C-130 from Nellis Air Force Base. Hawk hereby promotes the team from a provisional group to an operational unit, and thus, the beginning of the Joint Services Special Counter-Terrorist Group, or G.I. Joe, has started. Snake Eyes rolls himself into the lobby to get a soda for Hawk, where he meets Bob Light, who is reading History of the Peloponnesian Wars by Thucydides. As Snake Eyes gets the soda, he notices a katana hanging above Bob that he recognizes. Bob says it was a sword his father brought home after the Battle of Iwo Jima against Japan in World War II. He suggests that it's an Imperial Japanese Army standard issue, which makes it not that valuable. He knows the valuable ones have signatures on the tang, but this one just has some lines on it. But Snake Eyes knows it's more than just an Imperial Japanese standard issue sword. Snake Eyes stays and listens to Bob as he shows him more of his weapon collection and talks about his time in Vietnam, before Hawk eventually arrives to see what's taking Snake Eyes so long. Meanwhile, G.I. Joe prepares to deploy on board a C-130. On the Utah-Nevada border, Chimera stops and joins up with some other terrorists, including a mysterious disfigured man named Cahill. Don't get too attached to him because, despite his unique appearance and name, he really isn't important. Cahill does kill one of the terrorists after he complains about working with a ragtag group of combined factions. Chimera later kidnaps a woman who is the daughter of a governor that he wants to use as a hostage as they drive out into the desert of Nevada. Chimera presses some buttons on a fake cactus, which opens up a large ramp in the desert near the abandoned military base. As they go deeper underground, Chimera begins to explain his plan, and that he plans on targeting top investment counselors, heads of international banking firms, CEOs of major industries, a US senator, and a prime minister. G.I. Joe, meanwhile, drops from 300 feet to the area surrounding the base. The elite force fans out on their first ever mission as a team. As the sun rises, they discover the tracks that end at a straight line in the sand. Scarlet finds the shoe, suggesting a female hostage. Inside, Chimera continues to explain his plan to gain control of a major bank and buy up subprime mortgages to prime the pump, as all the other banks will not be able to resist. The chaos Chimera wants is what happens when the subprimes start to default. However, he is enraged when he realizes that the girl's shoe is missing, and one of his underlings reports about activity on the surface. Chimera acts swiftly to cut the communications in the area. G.I. Joe soon notices that they've been cut off from any support from the motel. While some soldiers suggest withdrawing, Duke looks at the shoe and realizes that they simply don't have time to withdraw and regroup. They have no choice but to storm the compound without reinforcements. However, Chimera decides to let the Joes into the base with the goal of capturing them alive. Hawk realizes that communications are jammed and soon discovers that the motel has dial-up internet and the phones aren't working. Hawk and Bob Light drive out to find the nearest working phone as Hawk needs to get reinforcements to G.I. Joe immediately. With the two gone, Snake Eyes grabs Bob Light's katana and weapons. Taking Connie's van, Snake Eyes eventually makes it to the other end of Nevada at Pear and Lovett Air Freight. He limps in and tries to get the men to take him to the base, which they are reluctant to do so considering he is masked and has no money. But after showing his burned face and putting up his silver star as collateral, they are silent before outfitting him with a flight suit from their Rickenbacker model. Hawk and Bob will return to the motel after looking across the county and not finding an operable phone, and Hawk realizes that Snake Eyes has gone to help G.I. Joe, noting that if he is wounded, they won't be able to conduct reconstructive surgery on his face. G.I. Joe eventually discovers the lift mechanism inside the base as they begin their descent down. Once inside the massive underground chamber, Heavy Duty remarks that it's as dark as a pit in here. While Chimera's forces mobilize and go to meet G.I. Joe, Chimera makes a call with the governor in question. But when the governor is hostile, Chimera kills the daughter. Scarlet hears the gunshot just before the engagement with Chimera's forces begin. The governor cries over the death of his daughter while Chimera dons his Saturn mask, taunting the governor and asking who he should go after next. His mother, who lives in an assisted living facility at 929 Myrtle Avenue? Or his sister in Boca Raton? Or his dog Sandy? The governor screams, asking what Chimera wants as Chimera walks away. One of his soldiers reports a C-130 is incoming. As the plane carrying Snake Eyes arrives, Chimera hits a button that detonates explosives on the base's airstrip, preventing a landing. Snake Eyes gestures to them that they need to slow down and go low, as he plans on jumping from the plane. The pilots point out that this is suicide, but soon enough, Snake Eyes is jumping from a moving plane onto the ground, falling limp after being thrown across the airfield. But it's not long before he gets back up and breaks out into a run, dispatching of Chimera's soldiers before entering a chute into the underground base. Inside the base, Chimera and Scarlet get into a one-on-one fight, while Cahill tells the men that they need to lure G.I. Joe into a dead end and use satchel charges to bring the base coming down on them. One of the terrorists say that this will be a major blow towards toppling the hegemony of big government and restoring power to the people, but Cahill calls him an idiot. Chimera isn't in this for the politics, he's in this for the money, and his whole big plan? It's a scam. He's running the biggest Ponzi scheme of all time. As the battle begins to turn to the Joe's favor, one of the terrorists suggests surrendering, who Cahill kills immediately. Once isolated from the battle, Chimera holds Scarlet at gunpoint as he explains that he's already won. The plan he's been working on for years is about to succeed. He describes two plans called Operation Poison Pen and Operation Poison Gas. Operation Poison Gas will release a toxin in 10 major cities by remote, and millions will die. The panic, like the September 11th attacks 4 years earlier, will result in the end of many civil liberties. This will all just be a smokescreen for Operation Poison Pen. Poison Pen is an email alert to be sent to thousands of bankers, stockbrokers, investors, insurance agents, realtors, etc. Said email will outline a legal strategy to make a lot of money through subprime mortgages, bundled asset diversifications, and other means which will cause financial chaos. Both operations will commence in 5 minutes. Meanwhile, the battle in the main chamber has pretty much been decided, as G.I. Joe stands at the ready with only Cahill surviving. Duke asks Cahill to surrender, but Cahill says he's done too much to sweep under the carpet. Duke says he knows a general who can help him, but Cahill laughs, as the orders he's following come from somewhere much higher than generals. Before explaining, he kills himself with a grenade. Don't think about that too much because Cahill will never be brought up again. At this point, Snake Eyes has infiltrated the base, and he attacks Chimera just as Scarlet attempts to splash acid on the terrorist in a simultaneous attack. However, the combination of chemicals and the flare from Chimera's gun sets Snake Eyes' face on fire. As the burning Snake Eyes fights Chimera, Chimera asks if Snake Eyes is a demon. As the two struggle, they eventually both fall down an elevator shaft, as Scarlet is too wounded to do anything. Chimera asks if Snake Eyes is here to drag him to hell, as he and Snake Eyes fall down the shaft. The main Joe team arrives, and Duke sees that Scarlet is deeply affected by the loss of Snake Eyes. Stalker reports on the death of the hostage and 2 programs counting down. Suddenly, a pre-recorded message from Chimera plays as he explains Operation Poison Gas and Poison Pen. Poison Gas will release a binary nerve toxin that came to the USA through 7 ports, shipped by rail to 27 locations. 500 cubic meters of it will be released by aerosol in 3 minutes and 8 seconds. Poison Pen will send an email with a plan for people to become rich, but it will result in disaster for the global economy, which will go off in 2 minutes and 49 seconds. They only have time to stop 1. Stalker sees the Gaussian cupola formula used in finance via Sklar's theorem to calculate risk. It has the power to destroy the economy. Meanwhile, Breaker notes that the poison gas will kill millions. Stalker points out that with a global financial meltdown, millions will starve in developing countries, and wars will break out where millions more will die. Duke is in despair as such a terrible decision as to which one to stop falls to him, and he can only make this decision in 28 seconds. Finally, he tells Breaker to shut down Operation Poison Gas. Breaker nervously begins to work but complains that Scarlet is better at this computer stuff than him, but Scarlet is still in shock over the loss of Snake Eyes. With just 3 seconds left on the clock, Breaker stops the gas. But a notification on the screen reveals that the email was sent out. The United States and the world will one day enter a global recession. Not all is lost, as Snake Eyes, badly wounded, climbs out of the elevator shaft alive. Scarlet holds him, though Duke seems a bit jealous at how much Scarlet is focusing on Snake Eyes.
He kinda just almost died, Duke. Get over yourself.
Breaker turns on the lights in the facility, and as G.I. Joe gets a better look at the area, they remark that it doesn't quite look like a pit anymore. And so, that ends the origin of G.I. Joe. The underground facility will become the new home base for G.I. Joe, and would be called the Pit. General Joseph Colton himself would eventually come down to the Pit and meet the team that was named after him, giving support to the team from higher up the chain of command whenever he could. I should know that Chimera was obviously supposed to be Cobra Commander before he was Cobra Commander, but because of what we learn about Cobra and how organization in Cobra works, he can't be Cobra Commander, so it's safe to assume he died down in the elevator shaft. If you enjoyed this episode, maybe consider the other episodes I've done on IDW G.I. Joe, or even my current reviews issue by issue of the currently ongoing G.I. Joe comic series, though it's set in a different continuity. Links will be in the description. Don't forget to subscribe for more nerdy content, follow me on social media to join the community, and consider supporting me on Patreon if you'd like to see the channel continue. Thank you all so much for watching, and have a great day, ladies and gentlemen. Huge thanks to our patrons, including this month's $10 plus patron Josh Adkins. Check out the description for more patrons and more info about how you can receive a shout out here.